Let me start by saying that Jerry can be a pain in the neck, but I love him. He'd say the same thing about me. He and I have been working together for 31 years, longer than that, but 31 years as president. Jerry, I know you're stepping down, pal, but I want to tell you something. There's very few men or women in the labor movement can say that when they took over an organization, they moved it from being significant to being truly powerful in representing the people they care about. You have made this union. You have made it in a way no one else has. And for 31 years, every time I've turned and asked for help, you've been there. And my folks in Delaware have been there as well. Right here, I see Delaware right here, and I see Delaware. So I got it, man. Hey, look, folks, I want to get straight to the point, if I can. I got you. All right. Let me make a few. I want to get right to the point here. To state the obvious, you guys are under full-blown assault. This is the greatest assault on working-class people and their unions that I've seen in my lifetime. Folks, these guys not only don't get it, the other team, they don't seem to want to get it. They hear labor, and they think enemy. They hear labor, and they see an opportunity to try to scapegoat labor for the problems they created. They really don't understand what we're about. They don't get that you're the most professional, disciplined, and well-trained workers the American people can get and deserve. They don't see it that way. I mean, they really don't. They really don't. They don't get what you do for our communities, the communities that you all live in every day. They talk about you as if you're taking advantage of the communities you live in, as if you weren't part of the community. When someone's trapped in a second story in a burning building, it's a public employee who runs into that fire. When a woman is in trouble, being brutalized, and picks up the phone and dials 911, it's a public worker who answers that telephone. It's a public worker who's dispatched to try to save her life. You see the work of folks like you on those god-awful days when you get up in the morning and turn on the television, there's a blizzard, it's 10 degrees outside, and someone has to go out on those rural roads to get someone trapped in an automobile. Someone has to saddle up and plow those roads so the economy of that community can go on. It's a public employee who does that. You see it. You see it late at night when a set of parents are distraught and worried. Their young daughter's not breathing properly. She's sick and getting sicker. You're the ones who drive that ambulance to the hospital. You're the ones waiting for them in the waiting room. You're the ones who saved that young girl's lives. A public employee. I don't know where Romney and these guys, this new Republican Party, was from. I don't know where they were raised. The way they characterize you as caring only about yourself. They call you selfish. They don't know you. They don't know you. I grew up in Claymont and Wilmington. I grew up with a lot of you guys standing back there in the Delaware AFSCME. I know you like your neighbors know you. You're not just in this fight because of your jobs, although that is critical. You're in this fight because you care about the family you live next door to, because you care about the city and town in which you live. You care about your community. And they call you selfish? Let's take a look at their value system, what they think is most important, and then let the American people decide who's being selfish here. These guys are out there, they start off with the Romney-Ryan budget. They want to cut $810 billion out of Medicaid, which will cut health care for $800 million, which will cut 19 million people off of Medicaid, causing hospitals in your community to close wholesale, causing nurses and orderlies and others who save the lives and help the lives of our citizens to lose their job. Why? Because they want to keep and extend an $800 billion book tax cut for the very wealthy. That's why they're willing to trade it off. Hey, folks, look, man. These are the facts. If this wasn't so real, it'd almost be funny. For millions of single moms, millions of single dads, millions of couples raising children, both working, what's the one thing that matters most? That when they leave for work where they have to go, they leave their child in an environment that's safe, secure, and nurturing. Daycare centers. It makes the world of difference to any of you who've had to raise a child on your own. I remember what it was like, and I had great family help, but just a peace of mind of knowing there's a safe place to send your child. Some of Romney's friends in this new Republican Party, they don't seem to understand. They say this child care program is too expensive. They say it has to be cut because we have to do something about the deficit, which I might add, they created. So, at the same time, they're cutting child care, the ultimate lifeline for millions of working moms and dads. What are they doing? They're insisting on keeping a $4 billion a year tax subsidy for oil companies. A tax subsidy even the oil companies say they don't need. For that $4 billion, we could literally double the child care program, create more productivity, more certainty for hard-working American people. Tell me what you value, Mr. Romney. Do you value more the peace of mind and safety of those parents and children, or maintaining a tax cut for companies that made hundreds of billions of dollars, tens of billions of dollars, I should say? You know, the President and I, we've already cut so-called discretionary spending by $1 trillion. And now Ryan and Romney want to cut another $1 trillion from so-called discretionary spending. Now understand, you guys get it, but discretionary spending is that part of our budget that covers everything from teachers in our schools to medical researchers to Border Patrol to cops on our streets. Without raising one penny in new revenue, they want to cut another $1.2 trillion. Without closing any loopholes in the tax code that only the very wealthy can benefit from who don't need it, they want to cut $1.2 trillion additional discretionary spending. They have to cut that. You know why? In order to pay for an additional $2 trillion tax cut for millionaires. Now that's, well, I'm not talking about the Bush tax cuts. Romney proposes, on top of keeping the Bush tax cuts for the very wealthy, he wants to add another $2 trillion, which will mean an average tax cut over the next 10 years of $250,000 on average to everybody who makes over $1 million, on top of the Bush tax cuts. As I said, I come from Delaware, a very wealthy state. My guys back there can tell you I've never played this populist card, sometimes to their chagrin, because wealthy people are just as patriotic as poor people. Wealthy people are just as ready to pitch in as poor folks, but no one's asked anything of them. And Romney and his friends continue to think if you just lavish more tax cuts on them and eviscerate the poor and the middle class, that somehow that's going to grow the economy. Ladies and gentlemen, look at their value set and ask yourself, who's being selfish? I say it again. These guys have a fundamentally different value set than a vast majority of the American people, Democrat, Independent, and Republican. My dad used to have an expression. He used to say, when someone would say, but this is what I value, he'd put his hand up and say, look, don't tell me what you value. Show me your budget, and I will tell you what you value. Don't tell me what you value. Show me your budget, and I'll tell you what you value. Well, Romney, Ryan, and the new Republican Party in Congress, they have shown us their budget. And it's clear they don't value you very much, and they don't understand or put any value on ameliorating the significant pressure on middle-class Americans, the pressure they're under today, whether it's keeping their job, keeping their home, child care, or being able to keep their kid in college. It doesn't much matter to those guys if you look at their budget. If you didn't know better, you'd think I'm making this up. Just listen to Romney. Romney commented on the president's desire a couple of weeks ago to maintain first responders and provide for public health and safety of the American people. Here's what Romney said to the president, and I quote. He says, he's referring to the president here, he says that we need more firemen and more policemen, more teachers. Didn't he get the message of Wisconsin? The American people did. It's time for us to cut back on government and help the American people. End of quote. Cut back on firefighters, police, teachers, public employees. That's going to somehow get us out of this god-awful hole they put us in. You know, of all Americans, you're the men and women who see the consequence of this god-awful recession and will see the consequences of the Ryan-Romney budget. You'll see it better than anyone else because you are where, as they say, the rubber meets the road. You see what happens when that county road isn't plowed and someone is trapped in a car in the middle of the night in the middle of a blizzard. You see what happens when the city or county hospital has to lay off nurses and orderlies because the budget's cut. You see what's happened to the quality of life for the people in that community. You see what happens when the ambulance driver picks up the husband who's had a severe heart attack, and the husband and wife get in that ambulance, and the wife is clinging to her husband's hand as he clings to life. And they begin to pass by the nearest emergency room, and the wife bangs on the back and says, "There, there!" And you have to turn and say, "I'm sorry, ma'am, there's code yellow. We can't go to that hospital. We got to go another 17 miles to another hospital." You see it. Guys, I'm tired. I'm tired of you being characterized as heartless, selfish group of public employees who care only for yourselves. These are your communities. These are your neighborhoods. These are your neighbors. And in fact, in this time of economic crisis, Romney and the Republican Party are not willing to do their part to get us through this god-awful crisis we've inherited from their policies. And it frustrates me. They're using you. They're using you as a rationale for having to slice public spending and eliminate necessary, very necessary public services. You know, Americans have always dealt with crises, whether they've been war or economic. They've dealt with them best and the quickest when everyone has chipped in. Everyone's part of the solution. But they've chose to scapegoat you to justify their draconian cuts and to really just batter unions. All over the country, you've demonstrated you're prepared to be part of the solution. That was certainly true in Wisconsin, certainly true in Ohio, in both places, public sector workers came to the table willing to compromise, willing to make sacrifices on contracts that had already been inked. I'll give you a recent example. I was in York, Pennsylvania. Going to the York School District. York School District's in trouble. They got an overwhelmingly large minority population in need of, vast majority in need of school lunch programs, et cetera. At a meeting, when I met with teachers and parents, the teachers union, and I know you don't represent them, but the teachers union, it's illustrative. The teachers union decided that they would freeze their own pay, not take the pay raises that they were entitled to in order to keep kindergarten open. No one asked them to do that. They got together and they did that. If we had time, I could give you examples of what all of you have done all over this country. Folks, a lot of Americans are still hurting really badly. My grandpop used to say, when the guy, I'm from Scranton, Pennsylvania, when the guy in Oliphant is out of work, it's an economic slowdown. When your brother-in-law is out of work, it's a recession. When you're out of work, it's a depression. It remains a depression for millions of Americans. With all the progress we've made, the 27 months of private sector employment growth, notwithstanding that, there's an awful lot of Americans who are still in a depression. How many of you, I'll bet every one of you can name someone right now who you know is going to go to bed tonight staring at the ceiling, wondering whether or not they're going to be able to live in that house 2 months from now. How many people do you know, now that the last semester of college is over, are dreading the conversation at the kitchen table with their son or daughter where they have to say, honey, I'm sorry, but I don't have the money to help you go back in the fall? How many of you know somebody who made what my dad referred to as the longest walk? The longest walk that any man or woman can make, in my view, is a walk my father made when I was in 3rd grade going into 4th in Scranton, Pennsylvania. We were living in my grandpa's home. There weren't any real good jobs. Dad had a job, but not enough. And I remember him walking up the stairs after school ended that semester and saying, Joey, I'm going to have to move. I'm going to move down to Wilmington, Delaware with Uncle Frank. There's better jobs down there, honey. I'll try to come home every weekend. It's only 153 miles. I thought that sounded like going to the moon. And he said, but I promise you, honey, it's going to be okay. And he did. He moved down. He went down. He came back. It turned out okay. But you know what? It wasn't until I got in my late 20s I realized even the longer walk my dad had to make. And my dad was a proud man like all of you. Was to walk into my grandfather Finnegan's pantry and say with my mom's brother standing there, Ambrose, I need a favor. I'm embarrassed to ask, but can you keep Jean and the kids? It's going to take me about a year, but I promise I'll make good. I promise, Ambrose. How many people do you know? How many people do you know made that walk? These guys don't get it. My dad used to say, Joey, a job's about a lot more than a paycheck. It's about your dignity. It's about your respect. It's about your place in the community. Ladies and gentlemen, this is not hyperbole. I truly believe from the bottom of my heart that's what this election is about. This election comes down to one simple, basic question. How are we going to rebuild the middle class? Because, ladies and gentlemen, when the middle class does well, the poor have hope and a way up, and the wealthy, they do very, very, very well. The president says we can't build this economy from the top down, but from the middle out. That's what this is about. To me, being middle class is not a number. It's a way of life. It's a value set. It's about a minimum standard of living. It's about being able to own your home and not just rent it. It's being able to live in a safe neighborhood where your kids can walk the streets, where there's a playground that's not polluted, where you can send your kid to a decent school, knowing if they do well, they got a chance to go to college, and if they have that chance, knowing you have a chance to get them there. That's what being a middle-class person is. That's not asking too much. That's who we are. That's what we believe. That's what you're about. That's what you built. Ladies and gentlemen, it's about knowing you can not only take care of your family, it's about knowing there's a hospital nearby that you can go to if you need it, a good hospital. It's about being able to put away a little bit of money for your retirement. And maybe in the process, help your mom and dad if they're in need. And pray you won't be able to have to be helped by your children. That's what this is about, ladies and gentlemen. And just what I just described you. You're the ones who make that possible. We owe you. You shouldn't be vilified. You provide the safe neighborhoods. You provide the good schools. You provide the school lunch program. You provide the daycare centers. You provide the hospitals. You provide the roads. You provide the ability of people to live a decent middle-class life. We owe you. God bless you, and may God protect our troops. Thank you.